Hello, this tutorial is brought to you by Ingebretsson's Nordic Marketplace. Today we're going to be talking about Easter feathers. In Scandinavia, it's a big tradition to make these Easter trees, especially in Sweden. They'll take dormant branches and put them in some water, and then you can watch them sprout, which is really fun. It's a nice welcome tradition for spring. There's a lot of history and different stories for the origin of this tradition, and you can read more about that on our blog post about the Easter tree. I'll try to link that up here. I've made a few of these feathers, and I definitely think there's some yarns that work better for this project, but all in all, they look cute and fun with whatever yarn you use, and I think it could be a great project for kids, something to do around the house, and another good way to use up old scraps of yarn. So I'm sure every knitter has remnant balls that probably look something like this or this, so this is a good project for that. The main thing I wouldn't really recommend is a synthetic yarn like acrylics. Part of this process I'll soak the feather and it helps to unkink the yarn, and with this acrylic one, let me take it off of here. I soaked this for about 30 minutes, which is way longer than you need to, and it really held the shape of the yarn still. It's still really cute and pretty, but if you want a more natural looking feather, I would recommend using a wool or other natural fiber. All right, let's get started. For this project, you'll need some yarn, ideally a natural fiber such as wool, cotton, or alpaca. You'll want a measuring tape for reference, the scissors, some craft wire, which is also optional, and you may want a pillow and safety pin, or maybe just some tape for working on your project. Depending on which size feather you'd like to make, you'll need between 50 and 100 strands of yarn. That's about 7 to 14 yards. For this larger pink feather, I made with bulkier weight wool yarn that was the Alafos Lopi. This one I used about 50 strands. They're each 5 inches long. The Rauma Mitu, which is a worsted weight wool, that one I used about 65 strands, and a finer weight yarn, such as the silky wool, I used 100 strands. For my demonstration, I'll be using the Alafos Lopi Icelandic wool yarn. So to get started, you'll want to make your 5-inch strips. You can measure this out. You can continue to wrap this around and then cut your ends. I found it's a little bit faster to cut a piece of cardboard. And then you can just wrap your yarn around the cardboard as many times as you need. And don't worry if you lose count, you can always make more strands later. After you have all of your pieces, you can cut the ends. And then you'll have all of your strands. The other part you'll need is a center strand to work on. Here I've cut about a 16-inch piece of yarn. You'll fold it in half. Make an overhand knot towards the top of your loop. If you're using wire, before you snug this up completely, take your piece of craft wire, cut it to size. I'm just sticking that through the loose knot there. And then I'm going to snug up this knot. It's a little long, but that's okay. The wire might slide around in here, but don't worry, that'll become more secure as you add your pieces. Okay, now it's helpful to pin this onto a pillow or just to have something to create some tension to work on. You could try taping it to your table, but I'm going to grab a pillow. Once you have your project secured on something, you can get started with your loops. You'll take one of your strands, fold it in half. I'm going to slide it under my middle work here, bring the loop over, pull up the strands, and pull this tight. Kind of snug it up towards the top as you pull it tight there. You have your first one. This is actually called a lark's head or the cow hitch knot, which I'm sure you've used before in your life. Now you're going to work on the other side. Again, folding in half, bringing the loop underneath of your work. Fold the loop over and pull your strands up through the loop. Slide this up to meet the other one and snug it tight. Again, other side, loop underneath, fold it over, pull your ends through, and snug it up. Underneath, fold it over, bring your ends through, and pull it tight, slide it up to the top. We're on our way. So I like to work on this side. If you turn it over, you can see the knots on the other side. So again, just keep alternating your sides, making your loops. And continue until your feather is as long as you want it, but definitely don't go all the way to the end of your yarn, because when you get to the end, you'll want to tie a knot here. So go about until that length. Okay, so I've used all of my strands and this feather might be a little bit smaller, but I'm fine with this size. So now I'm going to cut my wire here. Please don't use your fabric scissors like I am. And okay, so your middle strands that you were working on, I'm going to tie an overhand knot here. This will keep your last loop from sliding off, and it'll just keep everything nice and secure. Okay. So now you have a feather. You can cut this now, depending on what yarn you use, to make it look a little more realistic. I do like untwisting my yarns. So this part is a little tedious. It just takes some time, but I'm guessing that you might have some of that right now. Okay, and I know this yarn is very specific, but most yarns have some sort of a ply. If you're using a worsted weight yarn, they usually have a 3 or 4 ply, so you can untwist the yarn and pull it apart. You could split it in 2, or if you want, you can grab all of them. Again, this is a little tedious, but hey, something to pass the time. Okay, so you can untwist your threads and do that for all of your pieces. This one is interesting because it looks like a single ply wool, but it's actually sort of a 2 ply. So if you untwist it there's mainly 2 strands of wool, so you can untwist those. So that's what I've done with my example feathers, and I will continue to do that on this one. Untwist, grab the strands and pull them apart. This is why cotton and macrame, the macrame form has been popular, because this stage they can just brush this out. With yarn or wool, that's really just gonna snag and cause a frizzy mess. If you're using a cotton yarn, feel free to try it. I haven't done that yet. I also thought as I was doing this that some mohair would look really nice. If you have some laying around that you just don't know what to do with, go ahead and make some feathers out of it. Send us a picture. We'd love to see it. Alright, so I will continue to unravel all of these strands. After that's finished, one final step that you can take to flatten out these strands to make them look a little more even is to soak it in some warm water for about 15 minutes or so. This will relax the fibers and kind of straighten everything out. This is why I like using a natural fiber. Again, the acrylic really held on to the kinky yarn texture. But if that's the look you're going for, then go for it. Okay, this is one that I had made yesterday, and I unraveled all of the yarn and I soaked it in some water so you can see the thread has relaxed and straightened out a little bit. This is my top actually. Okay, so now you can just cut around the outside to make this look more like a feather and to make all of these edges nice and straight. If you want to make a paper pattern first before you start cutting, absolutely go for it and do that. I'm just gonna freehand it. Starting at the top here, I like to just cut across first, and then it'll go around the outside, making a gentle curve. Down to the tip. And then go back up the other side. Careful, don't cut your loop off if you want to use that. There you go. If you want to look a little more realistic, you can also cut some little triangles out at the top here or along the sides. Depending on what yarn you have, that might hold its shape better on some than others. Do it on the other side. So there you go. That's how you make a yarn feather. So enjoy making these for Easter coming up this weekend. Hope you all have a nice weekend. You're able to spend it with family, whoever you're stuck inside with. Have a Zoom call with people. Know that you're not alone, and you can still celebrate this wonderful spring holiday. Thanks for joining us here at Ingebretsen's, and happy Easter!